exactly 15 seconds, we'll be on the air.
Good evening and welcome to the Matt to Matt podcast. I am your host, Right Matt. As always, joining me is your host, Left Matt. And in studio, as always, the re-embodied voice of Joe. And there he is. Poof. Like that was planned. Once again, talking over his hello, hi there. I've seen the chat already. Some of you liked the intro. Excellent. That's good. That's good. This is... Don't
It
laugh
is
at
good.
me.
It's a good intro. It's more than good.
This is... Thank you. I appreciate it. I worked semi-hard on that. This is our 19th episode. We're going to try something a little different this week like we did last week unintentionally. So, as you can see in the...
No, it's what we say. Every 19 episodes, we switch it up.
Absolutely. Next week is our 20th, and you won't guess what we have planned when we figure that out.
No, but really, you won't guess. So guess, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Give us
We know
ideas.
you won't guess.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, so last week we just started off with a topic and went with it. So today we're going to with empathy. I saw a couple things this week specifically about empathy, so I figured we would try that today. Just wanted to say thanks for those of you who are live in the chat. Make sure you share this, like this on Facebook, get it out there. I'm actually going to tweet this out in a minute. So one of my 18 that's right, I have 18 followers on Twitter now. I'm getting
They're
up
all
there.
bots.
They're mostly bots. They're those accounts that are like 20,000 followers, 20,000 followed. Like they just hope to get a bunch of like follow backs. It is a good avatar. Thanks, chat. This is Dr. Joe. I think this is probably the best one yet, but we keep trying new ones, and I don't know, maybe we'll find a new favorite. See if that works. Hey, excellent. All right. Okay, so empathy. Hey, Ninja words that for me. Not that we don't know what it means, but let's just get full context for what we're talking about. I saw an enraging post on Facebook, and it made me really angry, but it was funny because it was about empathy. And I kind of stopped for a second, was like, you know what? Let me take a breath. Feel some empathy toward this person who was obviously just misguided. And try and approach that frustrating misconception from a empathetic, let's learn from each other direction.
And
so,
you did that without knowing the definition of the word empathetic.
I know, but I just want it listed.
Then why are we looking it up?
So that we can have it for those who don't know. I mean, you were going to just list it off and go, it's kind of like, you good, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, it keeps like going in and out. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's just,
Yeah.
just making sure you're good. So, empathy. Noun. The intellectual identification of the thoughts, feelings, or state of another person, capacity to understand another person's point of view, or the result of such understanding. So, interestingly enough,
It's like putting yourself into someone else's shoes.
it is. It's like putting yourself into someone else's shoes. Ironically, this call for empathy, if I can find it,
Ew.
that I had was was actually extremely non-empathetic, which is simultaneously kind of sad. And just an indictment of typical conversation and discourse these days. Let me just
Casserole.
get this ready. Who said casserole? Why casserole? I think the good doctor's hungry. You look hungry. He looks hungry. All right. Let's get into this. Casserole interruptions are good things. Thank you, Amor. All right, let's get into this. This is an article one of my friends on Facebook shared, and it's on Huffington Post by Kayla Chadwick.
Ex-friends?
And it's called and it's entitled I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people.
You're already painting a picture of what you think of this person with the tone you read that. I'm going to read it. I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people. There, see? No bias on my part.
The
I don't have
words-
beef with this person.
The words speak for themselves.
You're speaking for yourself.
That's my job tonight.
Wait, okay. No, that's
Yeah.
all right.
I encourage the both of you to do the same. Tagline. Our disagreement is not merely political, but a fundamental divide on what it means to live in a society.
That sounds super gushy. Mushy. Ill-defined.
It is. It is a little super gushy, mushy, and ill-defined. Let's dig into a bit of this and see what it's about. Is that coming in clear over there in my on the stream? I mean, in my. Do you have the stream pulled up? Anybody?
Yo.
Check and see.
Yeah, we're cutting it off on the left side.
Oh no, I
nicely.
just obviously. But I just meant the text looks illegible. It looks illegible.
good.
It is good. Okay.
Small, but good.
It's readable.
Readable.
Yes, Kayla goes on to say, like many Americans, I'm having politics fatigue, understandable. Or to be more specific, arguing about politics fatigue.
When everybody else is wrong, you run into that problem.
I don't like your tone. I haven't run out of salient points or evidence for my political perspective. Evidence for my perspective. It's an interesting way of looking at it. But there is a particular stumbling block I keep running into when trying to reach across a proverbial aisle and have those difficult conversations, so smugly suggested by think piece after think piece. I don't know how to explain to someone why they should care about other people. So, don't get me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the implication there is that when she argues with someone about politics on the other side of the aisle, the problem always or most often is that they don't care about other people, and she just can't get it through to them that they should care about someone other than themselves. Am I mischaracterizing that?
Sounds like that's the angle she's approaching
It
from.
does. Okay. Just making sure that I'm not being a smug little think piece.
Wait.
Well, it's like that
What?
the 10 habits thing. Listen first to understand, then to be understood. Everyone wants to be understood first.
Yep.
So
Personally, I'm just like, how do I... yeah, I don't know how to
Can't
add
improve
to
on that. Thank you, Doctor.
Yep. Doctor. Personally, I'm happy to pay the extra 4.3% for my fast food burger if it means that means the person making it for me can afford to feed their own family. If you aren't willing to fork over an extra 17 cents for a Big Mac, you're a fundamentally different person than I am. I'm perfectly content to pay taxes that go toward public schools, even though I'm childless and intend to stay that way. Hallelujah. Because all children deserve a quality, free education. If this seems unfair or unreasonable to you, we are never going to see eye to eye. If I have to pay a little more for each paycheck to ensure my fellow Americans can access health care, sign me up. Poverty should not be a death sentence in the richest country in the world. If you're
That's not a sentence. You realized that as you said it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're okay with thousands of people dying of treatable diseases just so the wealthiest among us can hoard still more wealth,
You're killing me, bro.
there is a divide between our worldviews that can never be bridged. Do you see a pattern in these arguments that she's trying to make?
They seem unbiased.
Just sweep off all of that thick icing of sarcasm. I'd like to know if there's an actual pattern. The sweet icing of sarcasm. What is the fundamental problem with she
Non-aggression principle. It's all about voluntary action. What do you mean? She doesn't
She's
support
a
voluntary action on the part of other people.
she
Like
is
letting them talk when they
Yeah.
want to speak.
She's attributing motive. She's attributing personal motive. Like as if people were to say, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to pay more taxes per paycheck. I would rather thousands of people died." Like, I don't think that's the argument people are making to her. You know what? Let them die. I don't want to pay more taxes.
Does it seem like a lot of liberals conjure that up? My little sister Rachel is pretty liberal, and I've noticed that these arguments tend to swing one way or another that would make you feel maybe more emotional about a certain narrative. And so I always tease her and I say, we were having a conversation about fire insurance, that it should be mandatory. I'm going too far off here, but no, just about liberals making those kinds of arguments. Rachel my little sister was describing the horrible situation that everyone would be in if there wasn't mandatory fire insurance. And I just always tease and say, oh, and can this family also have AIDS and lost limbs and things like that? Because it's just painted in such a negative way. As we just saw about do you want thousands of people to die if you don't do things my way?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. See, the problem is that people have fundamentally different approaches and understandings of how these issues that she's listing should be handled. And apparently, as best I can understand from this article, she is... Man, I just realized I'm ignoring the chat, and there's a lot. That's where the conversation is happening. That's why everyone's being so quiet. She is approaching these from everyone who disagrees with me politically is obviously stupid and selfish, and I'm just tired of trying to explain to them why they're all just selfish, horrible people. I don't understand that. There's such a divide, it'll never be crossed. Seems to me a fundamental misunderstanding of why people have a difference of political opinion. To clarify that for us today, we have Sensei Peterson to help us understand why this sort of empathy, which is why I brought that topic up. She is appealing to people's empathy. Don't you have empathy for these other Americans? How can you not care about them or see their point of view? Which is interesting because it appears to me she's having a hard time seeing other people's points of view. Let's see what Dr. Peterson has to say about it.
May I ask, do you feel, I don't care what you know, do you feel that? Does it seem like some of these arguments are supported by the idea that given a reversal of roles, every person in this horrible situation would side with her, would unselfishly give whatever was necessary to those in need?
Any moral, intelligent human being would side with her. Okay. And Jordan Peterson's about to explain why that thought is so prevalent and so compelling.
I don't want to make too grandiose a claim, but I've done some research with my graduate students on political correctness per se, because we've been interested in the personality predictors of political belief. It really does turn out that you vote your personality far more than you think, because like what you think is that you look at the world and there's a landscape of facts and you view the facts objectively and you derive your conclusions. And the thing is, it doesn't really work that way because there's just too damn many facts, right? And so you can't even really get an unbiased sample of them. What happens is that your personality works as a filtering mechanism so that certain things stand out for you more than other things. And so some things stand out more for the people on the radical left, and some things stand out for people who are liberal, and some things stand out for people who are conservative.
I just want to note that he had three groups of people there. The radical left, the liberals, and the conservative. Interesting. Continue, Doctor.
And then everyone says, well, look, I'm looking at the facts, and I'm drawing this conclusion. It's like, yeah, but what you don't understand is you're not looking at the same set of facts, and you can't even, and that's why you have to actually engage in dialogue with other people, because they'll expose you to their set of facts. I'm not saying that facts don't exist or that they're relativistic or anything like that.
Let's just pause there and make sure his point he's making is not misunderstood. It sounded very closely like he was saying alternative facts, right? which is, along the lines of fake news, which is a problem. People go, well, you can't just make up your own facts. That's not what he's saying. Did you get what the difference that he's making? Different point he's making there. He's saying through people's.
You can only be in one place. You can only observe so many things.
Exactly. People's People's personality and perspective allow them to see specific facts because we can't see and we can't. Oh, hey there. We can't see and understand and comprehend every single thing in the world. We don't have the mental capacity. We have to filter out and see what we consider as important according to our personality, according to our life experience. He's saying people have a set of facts. It's like a game of Boggle. These are the set of facts I saw on that board. Somebody else goes, these are the set of facts I saw on that board. Neither one of you are wrong, but without the other, you're missing pieces. And even then, you're missing pieces.
That speaks to me.
Does it? I knew it would. I knew it would. So that's what he's referring to. He's saying other people filling in those gaps with facts that they saw. It sounded very, very closely like he was saying people just, see things their own way and come up with completely alternative facts. Let's continue.
One of the things we found out about the politically correct types is that they're high in a trait called agreeableness. Now, you might think, really? That isn't what I would have guessed. But agreeableness is a maternal trait. And women are higher in agreeableness than men. That's cross-cultural. And that difference really seems to start manifesting itself primarily at puberty. And so agreeableness is likely the trait that stops you from throwing your baby out the window at 3 in the morning when it's had colic for 3 hours and you haven't had any sleep and you're not in very good shape and you just got laid off. It's a very, very tight bonding mechanism. And so what happens, it's primarily driven by what you might describe as compassion. Now, compassion is great for dealing with infants. And maybe it's great for dealing with hurt people and really elderly people. It's good for taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. But it's not a great doctrine to be building a political system on. And so one of the things that happens with the more politically correct types by temperament is that they suffer from an excess of impulsive compassion. And they assume that if there's an inequitable distribution of anything, that the people who are at the bottom are all victims who should be treated like infants, and that everyone at the top is a vicious snake-like predator. And that's hardwired in some sense. Now, it's a very popular story.
Now, it seems to me that this is the kind of narrative that Kayla from HuffPo is not only ascribed to, but is trying to get across to people and they just won't understand. Why can't everybody have everything they need and everybody be well taken care of 100% all the time? If you think there's a different way to run society, you're just a terrible, horrible human being. And that comes from having the trait, what did he say? Which one was it?
Agreeableness.
Agreeableness, yes. Where you just want everybody to get along and be happy and everything to just work so smoothly, which is very different than conservatives or right-wing people who are higher in orderliness and conscientiousness, where they like things to be in specific boxes and to run efficiently. And so the argument with, say, health insurance is, well, how can you say some people are going to have it more difficult? Why would you do that? Why would you put difficulty on other people? Two points to make against her argument that she was making. One, anyone in this country can access healthcare without paying $1. People don't go to a hospital and get rejected while they're dying because they don't have health insurance. Health care, yes. Health care is different than health insurance. People have trouble accessing health insurance. Now, yes, it can be a huge financial burden. Yes, people can go bankrupt from serious medical illnesses. However, people are treated for the ailments that they have. You cannot be dying and go to a hospital and then not be treated. That's what they do. You get billed anyway. But to say that the hospital is just going to turn people away who don't have insurance is, well, it's palpably absurd, as Peterson would say. But specifically on that argument, there is a popular notion being put around right now, since healthcare is something that's being debated. Where are you at? I see you. That I've heard it said, hundreds of thousands of people estimated will just die if Obamacare is repealed. Hundreds of thousands, which I think would be implying that before Obamacare, hundreds of thousands of people were dying every year from lack of health coverage. Would that stand to reason? If we remove
Why
it,
is
hundreds
that?
of thousands of people will die because they can't access care.
We'll return to what we were.
That would be the assumption, right?
I can't think of any.
I can't
great
think of any.
dispute for
I
that,
can't think of
yeah.
any problems with that either. It sounds to me like that's the that's the thing. Let's hear what Elizabeth Warren has to say about it. Elizabeth
please.
Warren, wonderful,
Can we listen to more? Elizabeth
empathetic,
Warren on the
empathetic woman. If she doesn't remind me of a very caring school teacher or grandmother who is so passionate about just people need to be taken care of. Dang it. That's just, and it's a very wonderful trait to have. It's not the best way to run a political system, but it's certainly admirable.
These cuts are blood money. People will die. Let's be very clear. Senate Republicans are paying for tax cuts for the wealthy with American lives.
People need kidneys, it's sad but decreed, yet the senator's hoarding one more than she needs. I offer this bill and I hope you'll vote aye, unless of course you just want people to die. Traffic deaths have many crying with fear. Over 30,000 people are dying each year. This modest change I propose must be applied, unless of course you just want people to die. Alcohol deaths are exceeding
It's a compelling
comparisons.
argument.
Black people, white people, Native Americans. We need to ban alcohol. It can't be denied, unless of course you just want people to die. Murders are bad. They have no defenders, yet many are committed by repeat offenders. I say lifetime in prison, whatever the crime, unless of course you just want people to die. I don't have a bill or a groan to detail. I just need a short clip for my donor email. Tim, there's blood on your hands. You want people to die. That good? Cool. Tim, dinner at 5? Yeah. The car deaths I mentioned are terrible stuff. Doesn't seem one seatbelt is ever enough. You must vote for my act so that fewer will cry, unless of course you just want people to die. The carbs, the container, we cannot ignore. Whipped cream's killing more people than ever before. This bill would be passed and be ratified if those people that didn't want people to die. Why not weigh all the costs, the effects, the results, empathize
Let
with each
this guy
other
in
as
here.
if we were adults, use our brains to craft arguments, not vilify. See that freedom's a trade-off. You want people to die! I tried.
That's pretty good,
Crossing
man.
the street is incredibly tough. People look left and right, but rarely look up. My bill.
I like that.
Isn't that interesting? Because it sounds like such a reasonable, sensible argument to go. You do realize people will die if you enact this, well, intelligent, somewhat balanced, logical approach to healthcare that might save the entire system from crashing and us turning into a system like Canada,
We
where
know what you
whoa,
want. We know what you want, though.
turning into a system like Canada, where people have to wait a year. Anecdotal, but people have to wait a year to get their leg operated on, and by the time they do, the doctor goes, "Sorry, we didn't catch it soon enough. We're gonna have to take the whole leg."
Yeah, to fight liberals, that's what we need. We need more
Anecdotes?
narratives and anecdotes. We need stories.
You
We
need empathy.
emotion.
You need empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I recall correctly, part of this argument was, let's see.
Amor, what do you mean when you say people?
Go ahead. No, I
do
was
you
just
mean
saying. Go
people
ahead.
falling through the cracks? I'm like, do you mean people missing surgeries they need to stay alive? That I don't know. That's like the most extreme example. But do you mean people not getting health care that they need? There's a problem in the country of people that
Same.
need help, but these are the same people that are falling through the cracks of the systems that the government provide.
It seems like in the next comment, people are denied preventative medicine. I think that's what a lot of what she's talking about.
Say it one more time.
People are denied preventative medicine.
Okay.
That's more what they mean. Yes, anybody can get emergency treatment, but not preventative medicine.
Do you have evidence for this? May I ask? I mean,
We'll
hate
wait.
to get too gritty on that,
Proverbs.
but that's I'm interested.
A stitch in time saves 9.
A stitch in.
Oh no!
about
Definitely the principle of preventative care is saving a lot of people. That's
Yeah, without a
that's
doubt, without a
100%.
doubt.
That's 100% accurate. Rand Paul is actually jumping on the healthcare bill, trying to shape it with certain amendments. Whatever they call changes to legislation that they're trying to put through, such as. Man, I read a whole list of them today, and I don't remember most
To
of them.
which bill are you saying?
But the healthcare, they're still trying to
Trump care.
ram through like the correction to Trump care. It's just a tangled mess right now. But Rand Paul is a person I definitely like a lot. But he's trying to just lower the cost by removing removing mandates, a lot of the mandates that end up driving up costs, and then people, even though they're mandated to get health insurance, when Obamacare first came out and my provider dropped me and said, I'm sorry, we're going to give you a completely different plan, or you can go buy one of your own. I went and bought one of my own, and my deductible was so high, 6 months of that year before it rolled over again, I never got a dime of actual insured, because my copay was just so high, or deductible. My deductible was so high, I never used it all. So I ended up paying like $1,500, which was like about my copay before it rolled over. And so it was like, well, I'm paying full price for everything, plus I'm paying for health insurance every month, and I'm not allowed to not do that. And that was the best coverage I could get. So it certainly didn't help. It certainly didn't help me, anecdotal. But that's the idea behind repealing it. Isn't, well, too many people have health insurance now. We need to just take this health insurance back. As she said, so the rich. What did she say about the rich? It was so...
I'd be really interested in, as I am with all government programs, what was the trend before the government assistance was provided? What was the trend in healthcare before, I'm going to say 40s, 50s? Before in the 50s when government, the IRS made an employer, what is it called? Not tempted them to. Like encouraged, incentivized employers and employees to take pay from employers as healthcare because it was tax deductible.
Mm-hmm.
So before government started meddling in health insurance, what was the trend in prices? That's what I'd be very curious about. I would bet it was going down.
Look up a graph.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me.
I don't know. But let's see. Going back to this quote, here's the notion, once again, that she puts forth. If I have to pay a little more with each paycheck to ensure my fellow Americans can access health care, sign me up. Poverty should not be a death sentence in the richest country in the world. If you're okay with thousands of people dying of treatable diseases, just so why? Just so the wealthiest among us can hoard still more wealth. That's what wealthy people do.
Hoard.
They hoard wealth. Elon Musk.
Yeah.
All he does all day is sit around feeling his gold coins before he falls asleep because they just feel so good in his hands. It's not like he does anything with his money. Or Bill Gates either. It's not like they do anything with their money. They just have it.
Hide it overseas.
Any other person with that money would do the same things they're doing. Anybody. It's not like they actually utilize it.
What about people who win the lottery though? Like
hoard. It's so silly because like hoarding wealth. It sounds like Scrooge McDuck with his giant thing full of gold. He's like swimming in, and it's. Do you really think that's where all the money goes? And to imply that the people, I don't know who she's talking to. I just have to say I don't know who she's talking to, but it sounds a lot like she's arguing with people like me, and I certainly do not want to pay less taxes for healthcare so that the rich can hoard more money. If you want people to die so the rich can hoard more money, why would that be my motivation? Of course, it's not my motivation, but it's implying you probably don't realize it, but what you're doing is you're enabling the rich to line their mattresses with more gold coins just so that other people to die just so that they can line their mattresses.
Okay, so you
with
do
coins.
acknowledge that she could have put it way better, but that she does not really, you believe, she doesn't really think your motivation is to watch rich people get richer.
I think she thinks people are too stupid to understand that's what's going on.
I see.
And so rather than saying, I understand that your motivation is for people to die, she's saying, oh, you do realize, but whether you realize or not, but you should realize that your motivations are just going to cause people to die, and the only thing that's going to come of it is the rich are going to get richer. I mean, but then I guess you wouldn't know anything about empathy like I do.
I have a good podcast to recommend.
Great. There's only so many. There's only 24 hours in a day, and so many in a week, and we only asked for one a week, which is not a very high percentage. So people have more time than ours to spend on other shows. Go for it.
It's on drug patents. I thought it was fascinating that the FDA has requirements for 20-year patents at the end of the patent to, things like the EpiPen, to share with people who want to enter the market as generic producers a sample of their proprietary drug. And so often, and I don't know, 60%. The podcast has a lot more information. We'll link to it. so often after 20 years, a person who created something original, got a patent, enjoyed monopoly privilege because that's in the Constitution. Congress did that. Phenomenal. But then the 20 years are up and they say, okay, we're going to make generics. And then the FDA says, okay, you're required to share a sample of this with X, Y, and Z generic producer. And they're like, nah, we think that would be unwise. It could get in the wrong hands. Something to that effect, that they'll say that they can easily skirt, or they can re-patent. They can very minimally tweak this product and then release it as a new patent and expire or let it fade into the
lapse.
Lapse. Thank you. Let the old patent lapse and stop manufacturing, in air quotes, that, and manufacture that with a different color capsule or something like that. So, big pharma, just very, very a lot more interesting than I thought it would be, but it's only possible, as George Washington said, government is force. It's only possible with the force of government. These astronomical prices of healthcare, of which drug costs are a big contributor.
So we should blame the government.
Absolutely.
Whose way?
So to reel this back into the point originally that I was making was about just the idea of, if you don't agree with me, obviously you're a terrible, horrible person, and I just can't ever get it through to you that you should care about other people. But as we learned from Jordan Peterson, people have these different ideas and different sets of facts based on their personality and their natural inclinations and the way they were raised or whatever. So really, realistically, logically, what we need to do is look at both sides of the argument and figure out where in the middle we should meet. But I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, everything's so divided right now. People just pulled so polar to the left and to the right. It seems to be a completely... no one seems to understand the idea that if you disagree with someone, it's not because they're stupid. It's because they're different than you are.
How open-minded do you think this Kylie or Kaylee is?
Well, she writes for HuffPost, so I'm just going to be biased and say she doesn't appear to be horribly open-minded, because if she was, she would at least put herself, as the definition of empathy said, put herself in the shoes of people and go, let's see, well, why do you think somebody would want to repeal Obamacare? Maybe it's not because they want people to die and the rich to get richer. Maybe it's because they think this is the best way to lower costs and to keep more people insured and to lower costs for everybody, maybe even put across state lines. Rand Paul's trying to put in competition across state lines, which not only will drive down healthcare costs, in theory. I'm pretty sure that's a fairly well-proven theory, that competition breeds not only better lower costs, but also higher quality of care when you have to compete with other people. When Obamacare, the American Care Act,
Affordable Care Act,
the Affordable, ACA, when the Affordable Care Act went in, a lot of providers stopped selling in certain states, and so they didn't have to. It got down. I think Jersey had 2 or has 2 at some point. That's it. When it had a lot more before that. And that certainly doesn't help costs. That's part of why costs are going up. So, like I said, I don't want to talk specifically about healthcare and what is or isn't wrong with it, but just the idea that just because we disagree on it, it is a fallacy, and it is a huge mistake to just assume that the person you disagree with, because I disagree with this person writing this article, not so much about the points that she's trying to make or her positions on we should keep healthcare because people will die. That's not a logical argument for like, as we saw with that parody song, the satire of, you do realize there are lots of ways we could keep people from dying. And it sounds so, well, of course people will die. People die all the time. But people do die. In fact, Joe, look this up. Opioid epidemics rise in the last couple of years. There are a couple states where it was a problem, and under the Affordable Care Act, access to medications like that that are addicting, painkillers and other such things. Access went up, and more people have been overdosing and having becoming hooked on these drugs than before. So because of the Affordable Care Act, people are dying. That seems to be in effect already. So
correlation doesn't mean causation. You're just correlating.
No,
more
you
access
can
to
you
drugs
can act,
with more drugs.
Yeah, like no, you can plainly make a connection there that people can't access these. There's more of them on the street, and then the people getting hooked on them and overdosing on them goes up. That is a direct correlation, and you can tell that's causation. I'm sorry, but if that's not causation, you can dispense with the idea of causation entirely. Name me something more causal than that. There are more pills on the streets. More people are dying from pills. Yeah, those things aren't related. Not necessarily.
You didn't say on the streets, though.
We just need pill education programs. More people need to understand how to take these pills and like when to take them, how much and things like that. No, it's the idea that thousands and thousands of people will die. They will die. That's fear-mongering. It's absolute fear-mongering. People are dying. And in fact,
I was going to say, with this program,
look this up. What?
Are people dying with this program in place?
The Affordable Care Act?
Thousands of people will die if the ACA is repealed. Presently, are people dying?
Presently, well...
thousands of different people will die. I don't know.
Fact check me on this if you have or haven't finished doing that. Life expectancy went down in the last couple of years. I heard someone cite that, and I don't have it saved.
And females?
In the country. It was very broad. He cited the study saying it, but I didn't save it. So look that up if you can find it. But the idea that what we have now is so perfect and pristine, right?
Probably went down after the United Airlines. Okay, all right.
That's horrible. So yeah, it just the idea of the fear mongering and the I can't believe anybody would disagree with me because like Jordan said, I've looked at the facts and I've based my opinion on those facts. Therefore, if you disagree with me, you aren't looking at the facts and you're just not being smart about it. What are you looking at? I don't know either. So let me get to the chat real quick. I've been neglecting it. It's funny. Chat says. It's funny. The medical care I received as an uninsured person was better than the care I got as an insured person from the same medical facilities, too. The best solutions come from compromise, but nobody wants to do that. There's always... Is that my dog? There's always a lot to learn from the other side's perspective. Absolutely. There will always be people that die. It's just scary when the change in law can be your death sentence. Yeah, well, do you remember people saying, death panels? The Affordable Care Act will bring death panels. People will die. That was the same argument from the right under the Affordable Care Act. And as far as, did you find anything on it? No, of course.
I only found data through 2010. And then the second Google result said life expectancy declined for Americans for the first time since 93. And I couldn't interpret the charts fast enough.
Oh.
I can go back to it if you want.
That's good enough for me. A Google headline, perfect. That's
There you
good.
go.
But like I said, I'm not trying. Does it make sense? I'm not trying to necessarily argue for or against the Affordable Care Act or Trump Care or
government-sponsored healthcare?
Government-sponsored healthcare or whatever solutions people are putting out. Just the simple notion that people you disagree with are heartless and stupid is a stupid perspective to have. It's not constructive. And
yeah, I think you're opening assigning motive. That phrase you used best puts it best. I mean, you started simple, and I think that's right. It's
so
she said because right.
Mm-hmm.
She said X, Y, and Z because X, Y, and Z because.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard waving your hands gets more YouTube videos. So
because
it does. Healthcare.
Phil DeFranco's got them all over the place. He's got his hands up and down.
It
and
looks
around.
like you're contributing more, but it's the same thing.
Exactly. That's why we gave Joe a new body so that he could actually, but his arms don't work.
Nope.
He's like the Dread Pirate Roberts after
oh brother,
after that torture machine that wrecked him. Yeah. So, Joe.
Yep.
Any thoughts on the idea of putting yourself into other people's shoes and trying to see their point of view and understanding that left versus right, sometimes one's more right, sometimes the other's more right, but we just disagree.
That was a pretty long sentence. I think it's good to put yourself in other people's shoes.
Well said.
How do you do that? How do you do that for real? For real?
Well, first you need to be re-embodied.
You have to. No, you can do it figuratively. You have to listen. Well, as I said earlier, listen first to understand. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And in this show, we talked about what was that guy's name? Dr.
Peterson?
Dr. Peterson said that, what did he say? Oh, yeah, he said that there are so many sets of facts and that our personalities filter out a lot of facts. So the best way is to talk is we have our own set of facts that we know, and the best way is to have a dialogue and talk to other people. I hear some people say there's things you're not supposed to talk about with other people, such as religion and politics, but I think it should be the opposite. Like, you should talk to, like, our topic was political. You should talk to more people about political things, even if you're going to have disagreements. It's good to be exposed to a wider picture.
Can I?
Bigger sets of facts, huh?
Does it ever seem like I would just second that as a rule of thumb for like coworkers you're new to knowing and coworkers in general, religion and politics, it's easy to stay away from. That's been my experience. But does it ever seem like it's harder to discuss politics with people if that piece of government affects them directly? Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think at the same time, it's probably more important. Because we can sit here all day and talk about, what's going on in some other state or with some other group of people.
Wisconsin local politics.
Wisconsin, or the,
Illinois
the Dakota Access Pipeline, which actually doesn't affect any of us in this room.
Gas prices?
Directly.
I don't know, it doesn't.
Directly. Well, the idea of the land being, wrongly built on, whatever that was all about. It would probably be a lot more constructive to talk to somebody whose native land that was and go, well, how do you feel about it? How does your family feel about it? What is your general sense of the...
What is videos of America? Sorry.
Yeah, they have videos of both people supporting it and people being against it. People from that town supporting it, people from that town being against it. People saying these protesters are wrecking the place. Nobody invited them over here. They just wanted to be, important and on camera. So suddenly all these hipsters come over and they think this is Burning Man or Woodstock, if you please. And it's irritating, and they're not helping, and there's no point to this.
But yeah, but
people
only the
from
people
the town,
who support the pipeline are saying that. Only they're complaining about the protesters there, right?
Well, of course, the people who don't like the protesters are complaining about them, and the people who do aren't.
Right. I mean, there might be some people who support the pipeline that don't support.
I'm pretty sure are there still protesters there. I don't think so. Yeah, they all got tear gassed away.
I like that, Amor. My dad says something similar.
What does she say?
My dad?
What did she say?
Oh, she said there are a lot of experiences that we will never have in our lives, but chances are somebody else has had those experiences. My dad's been working at his job for like 30-some years, and he said he makes it a point to like listen to some newcomer schmuck on other crews. He's in the radiation protection crew, but if there's some carpenter, some electrician or something that feels the need to share some knowledge with him, he'll always listen because he's like, they have 22 years. They have 26 years of experience that I don't have. Yeah, I don't know. There's another quote, something along those lines. Every man I've met has been my superior in one way.
Mm-hmm.
At least.
Or as Bill Nye says, everyone you ever meet, knows something that you don't know.
Yeah, that's sentiment. Yeah. Bill Nye.
Yeah.
The science guy, or
isn't that
another
interesting?
Bill Nye?
Interesting. No, the mechanical engineer.
Other Bill Nyes?
Bill Nye, the mechanical engineer. I don't know who you're talking about. The science guy. So, let me just pivot real quick from there to what we're kind of going into. With this horrible division and people writing articles like this, not only saying, "Hey, I'm done trying to explain it and I'm done talking to you people," but saying it in a way of, "You know what? I'm just tired of trying to make you not a horrible person." And then people I know sharing this on Facebook and going, "Read this, you'll understand me," saying, "This is the exact sentiment I have." people I know and people I grew up with saying, I'm so sick and tired of trying to explain to you why empathy and understanding and maternal instincts to coddle people in every and any way is the only way. And how do we have a more constructive conversation with people who feel like this?
Through bulletproof glass.
Okay. All right. Well, that's one suggestion.
I don't know. They tend to talk over you, in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's so annoying.
People talking over people.
Aggressively.
In my experience, it's been terrible.
Okay.
That joke never gets old.
I just remembered
that
the
joke
word
never
of the
gets
day.
old.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I know what it is now.
Yeah, the only way to do it is in person. Excellent point, Amor. Excellent point. For the last year or so, I've been following a lot of people on YouTube. They call the skeptic community, the anti-SJW community, social justice warrior, anti-social justice warrior community, and they make a lot of videos. They're 10 minutes long, and they usually address a specific point. Or, for example, they'd address this article and say, "Here's what you think." And some of them are not constructive at all, but some of them are. And while we can't always talk to people in person, it is far, I think, more productive to have a conversation, even if it's not a conversation with people, which sometimes takes place, live streams, Skype calls. They'll do videos like that a lot too. But just to make a quick, a video going, hey, this is how I feel. This is where I think you're going wrong. And this is where I think you can look at it from a better perspective. If done respectfully, as if you're talking to them in person, I don't know. It is a close second, and it's certainly way better than Facebook comment section. I tried that last November around the before and after the election, actually responding to people online and being here's where I think you're not looking, and it got so hostile so fast. They weren't quite understanding where I was coming from. I don't know. I tried to phrase it in a kind way, but they were just like this article where it's well, I guess I just can't explain to you why you should have empathy for other people. If you're going to be heartless, maybe I should unfriend you. I'm you mistook me. That's not how I meant that to go. So, does that make sense? So there are conversations we can
I
have.
never tried doing that. The hardest part for me is it takes time. People can only really absorb it in bite-sized chunks, in absorb-sized chunks.
Yep.
Nicotine patches, Liberty patches. I don't know. That's the hardest part for me. Is that I find one area that is their loose brick, as Brother Cox at LDS EHE said. I forget his first name. That was his thing. Is he's find everybody's loose brick in their house and then tear their house down. But find where to
go
start.
be
right?
the big bad wolf, everybody.
Find the chink in the armor.
If people have built up walls around themselves, then find the loose brick. That's what it was. Find what interests them. Find some areas of overlap. I was going to say shared overlap, but areas you agree on some things and then branch out from there. That's the hardest part for me. Is waiting, patience, waiting. That okay, maybe you don't want to cross any traffic, but we'll start where we both agree, and then we'll build bridges to other topics. And then I'm I want to push them off the bridge. Hey, keep going, go in that direction. That imagery was just vague and
first you tear down their house, you throw them off a bridge. That's how we solve this problem. Darn empathetic.
Right. But I will say this: the two things that have worked great for me. One is pretty much the non-aggression principle, starting from there, person and property. Right.
Sorry, explain that real quick.
The non-aggression principle says it is immoral to initiate violence against a non-aggressor. And it can be tickled, teased. It can be teased apart into different parts, but that is the underlying foundation of it. And as far as I wouldn't pat myself on the back and say convincing people, but as far as getting respectful pauses from people who disagree with me, as it looks like their gears are turning. That's the word. I can see that they're thinking about it. Has been talking about posterity. Seriously, talking about the idea of I'm a money guy. I like thinking about money, but
did you say prosperity?
Posterity and stealing their prosperity. But the idea that all these decisions that phenomenal, even if we both agree that the NSA should listen to all of our phone calls. Who's going to pay for it? That sounds so silly, but our tax dollars going to pay for it? I have a report from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's years. He had his staff, his administration, investigate into where just this one tax, I don't know about liquor, excise taxes, anything, gasoline, excise taxes, but where did the federal income tax money, and this was during Reagan's waning years, I guess, and it was 100% of that money is absorbed by transfer payments. So, like, paying bureaucrats to move money through the system to make promises that money will be there in 30 years when they're out of office. But so I like talking. I mean, it's like, it's right under your nose.
So using that as an example of how you would tell somebody, hey, here's a thing that directly affects like the future
precisely
for us,
kids.
For your children.
And I think
the same way you just like, do you want people to die? I kind of like that, but in a more intelligent way.
I think there's a strong zeitgeist. There's some kind of link in the zeitgeist between acceptance of however much debt you think you can get yourself, however much credit you think you can get accepted for, and not having kids. Not having kids seems like, why is that? I'm going way down. Yeah. I'm going too far here.
Yeah. Well, no, I like where you're going with that. Let me just hit this point that the chat said. This is where debate comes in handy. Try arguing genuinely the side you don't agree with. Twig says Left Matt likes to do that. Yeah, that's a term that
devil's advocate.
Well, it's a term that what's different than devil's advocate, because devil's advocate is usually like, well, I mean, what about this other piece? You know, let me just say, even though I don't agree with it, somebody might argue this point. Its difference is what they call steel manning. It's the opposite of straw manning, which is where you present the other person's argument in the strongest and best fashion you possibly can when you're debating against it, rather than trying to find the little weak parts or straw manning where you build up a false argument, like you want people to die and the rich to line their pockets. So obviously that's a straw man argument. It's obviously not what people want.
I think that's brilliant.
To steel man a person's argument by saying, look, this is obviously what you want. You think this is going to lower. You think competition is going to lower costs. You think you're of the opinion that this will help have more people keep their insurance. It'll lower the cost possibly of health care, not just health insurance, but health care, allowing people who either don't have insurance or don't have good insurance, who have like a co-insurance where like you pay 40% of everything. It's not just a deductible and coverage. I had that. It was awful. But then when the main price, the base price of everything goes down. So those are arguments that can be made and then debated against. But then, you know, that's steel manning a person's argument. And that's a way better thing to do than just going, so stupid. How can you be so stupid? It doesn't convince anybody on the other side. It's what causes a great divide. To just go real quick to like I said, these people on YouTube who have these anti-SJW channels during the election, they were extremely combative. Very, like a lot of, you're so stupid. How can you be so stupid? John's so stupid. Like that was their argument, and I guess it worked because Trump won the election. But lately they've been trying. A lot of these people who just appeared to just hate each other have been trying to bridge that gap and see from each other's point of view. Last week. Not that a lot of people know in our audience, but last week was YouTube's convention, VidCon, and a lot of these people in this they're very centrist. A lot of them are liberal, but they're not radical leftists. They went there to talk to a lot of the people they disagree with, and they've made response videos to, which in the past they've been less than charitable to. And what ended up happening was a lot of people were expecting this to just turn volatile and for people to just fight and argue, and they're like, ooh, they're in person. Is somebody going to get slugged? Like, what's going to happen here? With the exception of one person who was completely unreasonable, this radical feminist who was completely unreasonable, lashed out against somebody for absolutely no reason. The rest of the people on the radical left and these anti-SJW, anti-politically correct people, it was weird. You saw these selfies on Twitter. I saw these people taking selfies together, and I'm like, weren't you guys arguing 6 months ago? They were, but they had conversations. They had constructive conversations. Like, you know, the last couple of days, they've all been putting out videos going, oh, okay, I talked to Lacey Green, and I apologized for being so mean. She said she understood why. She didn't like it, but all those kinds of things. And they've bridged a lot of gaps. And so a lot of them are collaborating. They're having constructive live streams together and
making inroads.
Making wonderful inroads. And I think a lot of that had to do with being in person, like you said. Anymore. They were in person, and it's a lot harder to be that mean to somebody. Not only when you're talking to them, like live streams help a lot when people get on like Skype and they debate. You're actually talking to a person, you can hear their tone of voice, you can see their face, but actually in person is a lot more difficult to just be needlessly combative than it is
it's
to
a
just
skill
be kind
though.
and try to
Conversation
understand.
is a real skill.
Absolutely.
Like learning when somebody's thought process is over.
100%.
My bad. Can I make a third point on that?
Go for it.
The reason I brought up the Ronald Reagan thing, and we're going to take it my direction for the last negative 2 minutes of the show. The reason I like that story about the Ronald Reagan administration finding that 100% of the federal income tax goes towards transfer payments and interest on the national debt is that you can turn these, and it's just helpful to help them look in the mirror, perhaps, to use these people's arguments against them. By those people, I mean those that would claim true empathy for the downtrodden. You can say, you're consuming now at the expense of later. That's what debt is. Since your taxes aren't funding X, Y, and Z program, don't you have empathy for the future? Don't you have empathy for those? Like you're lading them down with debt, and they're not born yet. I don't know. That seems like something that like someone who was truly empathetic would want to reevaluate.
Absolutely.
That how could you put some debt on somebody that you're going to love in the future that you haven't even met? I don't know, something like that. And the kid, not having kids, definitely comes into it.
Just an interesting point that we brought up last week. Do you remember when we talked about charitable givings in the United States?
Going up.
Does anybody remember how many? I think it was 2015 or 2016. We had pretty recent numbers. How much charitable givings of dollars there were in America from individuals?
More than 600 billion?
$250 billion from individuals. 350 billion total. That's not government welfare programs. That's people giving their money to go to better causes. I think there's a lot to be said for the kindness and empathy, as we're talking about empathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes. Apparently, those in our country who do have a lot have no problem giving more, even at the rates, of taxation that we have on the rich right now. They still give more. I guarantee that $350 billion was not coming from
they only do it to
from
evade
lower
taxes.
class people. Regardless, it's going to a good cause.
So taxes encourage charitable giving.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's either taxed or it's charitably gave. Sorry, that felt really bad coming out of my mouth. Given, charitably given. But it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen these things on Facebook where they're like, "Hey, little Kimmy needs a kidney. We're raising money," and then they get just overwhelming amounts of money for little Kimmy.
Cool.
Even though there's like lots of people who need kidneys. Why do you suppose that is? Why do you think everybody goes, "Oh, Kimmy needs a kidney"? You didn't tell me Kimmy needs a kidney.
Story.
Sure, I'll give you money. Well, isn't there like, I don't know, isn't there a way that there could be more of like a philanthropy of, hey, there's a lot of people who cannot afford insurance or health care, and if you can't afford health care and you have some disease, do I just not know about these? But are there like, hey, so-and-so has cancer, needs treatment, can't get it, can't afford insurance, has been denied. Anybody with extra, can you pay to help this person out? Aren't there charities doing that already? Probably.
I don't know about for sicknesses, but if you want is accountability on the part of the charity, go to DonorC.com. SEE, like I'm looking at it. DonorC. They have that. Did I have already mentioned that though?
Interesting.
I don't know about healthcare
so.
per se, but it's like a family in Malawi needs $300 to build a house, and they're in Africa. They have like cell phones. They take a picture of the family happy with their house, and they have suggested projects that the administrators of the website look at, and it's like wheelchairs and bridges and a lot of things in Africa. Sadly, a lot of sad stories there. But just think about what $1 could buy in Africa. Let's.
No. Keep going with your point. That's not what I'm pulling up.
It feels good to see evidence of your donation to an individual or to a focused group of individuals, as opposed to trusting the administration of a public or private charity. That's it.
On those notes, I like to end with this. All right. Where are you at? Screen share? Here we go. This is an article called "Bleeding Heart Tightwads," an opinion page op-ed from Nicholas Kristof, December of 2008. This holiday season is time to examine who's been naughty and who's been nice, but I'm unhappy with my findings. The problem is this: we liberals are personally stingy. Let me go down to the... let's see. Arthur Brooks, the author of a book on donors of charity, Who Really Cares, cites data that households headed by conservatives give 30% more to charity than households headed by liberals. These are the people who don't care about other people and just want them to die. They're the ones giving 30% more in 2008, mind you. This was right before the crash. Well, it was at the beginning of the crash, December of 2008. 30% more to charity than households headed by liberals. A study by Google found, that'd be a great app. An even greater disproportion. Average annual contributions reported by conservatives were almost double those of liberals. Now, I don't know. Let's link this article so that you guys can dig through here and make sure the rest of this says what we think it says. Here we go. All right, I'm just going to add this before I forget. So what does that say to you about the implications of this person's opinion of these people who just want everybody to die, and the findings of the study from 2008?
I wonder who paid for the study. I'll bet there's plenty of studies that show liberals donate more than Americans than Republicans.
Look that up for me, real quick.
This is
the last thing we're doing. My keyboard was done. Figure it out. Hey, thanks, Ian. Nice. Read that comment as best you can, Joe. Translate that.
It's because when it becomes real, if you put a face and a story to it, people have something to emphasize with. What do you do?
Absolutely. So I just want to end on this note. Like I said, I think there's just a lot of I think there's a lot less empathy than there should be, and I think we all need to do a whole lot better. Like I said, I tried.
I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel.
I tried on Facebook. It was a horrible place to try that. At least with people who strongly disagree with me. Just because it just turns so hostile, and hostile just makes these things worse. It gets people to share things like this beautiful article from HuffPo saying, "I'm done." Let's not be done. Let's try and help find ways to talk to people. Like you said, people who are directly affected by this. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories from you, Joe, about talking about people where we'll bring up a subject and you'll say, "Well, I know a person who was affected by this personally." And I'm like, "Well, you got one on me. I don't know somebody who's affected by this personally. And the best I can do is talk to you who does know someone." But apparently you do have at least some of these conversations with people about things that affect them directly. Do you think that
I do.
Do you think that helps? Do you think that helps with some empathy on your part?
Yeah.
That was a loaded question. He's leading the witness. I'm sure that helps with a lot of empathy in your part. I think we should all try and here's my challenge this week. I just think we could all do a lot better job of trying to understand everybody else. That's really my point. Rather than attributing negative motives to people, I think most people are just trying to do their best and trying to figure out what's best. Would you agree?
Sounds pretty general.
No, I think the implication was these people just want people to die and the rich to get richer. I don't think that's the case.
Politics might be different, but I've gotten the best results. I've been happiest when I've assigned the least motive to people.
Yeah.
That's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. Who is it who says if you can attribute incompetence before malice? Well, I forget how he says it. But essentially, if you can chalk it up to incompetence rather than malice, do that. However, that's better said. Mm-hmm. You heard that before?
No, something. No. Yeah, no, yes.
Something to the effect. Certainly not the way I put it. Facebook is not the place for a discussion. Absolutely not. It's frustrating because everybody posts so many strong things on there. And I'm like, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling.
Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity, comma, but don't rule out malice.
Who said that?
That's Hanlon's
the internet.
razor.
Hamlet's razor?
Hanlon,
H-A-N-L-O-N.
H-A-N-L-O-N.
I thought that was Occam's razor. What's Occam's razor? Let's end on
simplest-
Occam's razor and the word of the day.
Occam's razor is
a word.
He said and.
And the word of the day. Yeah. We'll do that.
Occam's
then we'll
razor
do the word of the
something to
day,
the
and
effect
then we'll be
of
done.
the simplest explanation is the most likely. The explanation that makes the least assumptions is most likely. Something to that effect. Joe's going to correct me? Is there a much better way of saying it?
It sounds like it's got the spirit of
Good. Feels like the more simply I say it, the more accurate I'll be.
Yes,
That.
the more.
Okay, here's the word of the day. Can we pull it up? I sent it in the Facebook. And I think it's fairly applicable to what we were talking about today. That's why it came to mind, because Matt got awfully blank, the word of the day here.
Okay.
It's bellicose.
That is a good quote.
This is more like... the way I've read it...
Ooh.
Okay, bellicose is an adjective. Warlike in nature, aggressive, hostile. Showing or having the impulse to be combative. But I haven't seen it in nearly such a... military description. When I've read it, it's more of like an...
You need to look them up on Ninja Words before you hand them over to Joe, so that you know how it is he's looking them up.
Well, it uses Wiktionary, so I mean, it's not...
Why aren't we going to Wiktionary?
It's not your Merriam-Webster, because Ninja Words is really fast.
Ninja Words is so fast.
Why? Wait, how is it fast? How is Google not fast? Bellicose. How do you spell bellicose?
Bellicose.
See, Ninja Words came out when Ajax was invented. That's basically like your web page can kind of load up web pages without actually going to a different URL. So it just like automatically does it inside. That was a big thing when that was invented.
Gotcha.
So Ninja Words
that makes sense.
Made very good use of that.
So was this more of the definition you were looking for? Belligerent, aggressive, hostile, warlike, warmongering, hawkish. That's a mean thing to say. Antagonistic, pugnacious. I like that.
I think truculent.
Truculent. Confrontational. Ooh, that's a new word. No.
Chip on your shoulder.
Contentious, militant, combative. More informally, scrappy. Spoiling for a fight. Spoiling for a fight. Boy, that guy was spoiling for a fight. Let me tell you. That's awesome. Yes, I like that very much. All right, with that, any final thoughts? Chat, Matt, voice of Joe?
Don't be bellicose.
Don't be bellicose. Have empathy. Don't be bellicose. Have empathy. I think that's a great summary of this evening.
Mm-hmm. 10 out of 10. Would not re-summarize.
Yep. Pugnacious. Yep. All right. Well, let's see. Same time next week with maybe a couple different changes on the. I'm glad you liked it this week. The new intro.
I liked that audio too.
Nah, it was pretty bad.
Which audio?
Pretty much all of it.
Which audio are we talking about?
The one that you should get an award for.
Who said I should get an award for audio? What are you talking about?
Remember when don't you remember when I made that little trophy that says award for best audio or something?
Oh, that's right. He like
Oh, there it
hold on,
is. I
Hold
got
on.
it. I got it.
Do you have it?
He's got it.
Where's this slide?
0 audio problems. That one of the videos came in
Oh,
a bit.
wait a
Oh no, where'd you go? One of the. Oh, that's not what we. Oh, come on now. You didn't be spoiler warning. What?
Nope.
Watch. Perfect
I
audio
tried
award.
to full screen.
We had one video come in a little loud. Other than that, we had a perfect audio night. You did hear the intro audio play, which I wasn't sure about. We couldn't hear it at the time, so it's nice to know that it was there. Thank you so much for your feedback in the chat. Thank you so much for... Thank you. That gets frustrating. Where is it at? It's not even in here, is it? Anyone? Anyone?
What? Music?
Yes. Supposed to be. Thank you. It's supposed to be right there in my DLs.
Oh, download folder?
Yeah.
Is
What?
there any reason it wouldn't be in there?
No, there is no reason it would not be in there.
Okay. Then
Ugh. All right.
got a
Well,
recent files list.
no. Yes. Hold on.
No tech issues.
No, none whatsoever. All right. Well, with that, like I said, same time next week with a new word, a new topic, and hopefully just as much wonderful participation from our beautiful audience. Thank you so much. We will we'll see, we'll see you guys next time. Is that how you normally say bye?
Kind of like a grunt of agreement.
Yeah. Or like when you eat a good cheese. It's a good. It's good cheese. What is that? A bit of brie? Gouda, man. Gouda cheese. I always to a good Gouda.